So imagine being like the most successful person in your entire city. You wear custom clothes, you eat at these five-star restaurants, and your social credit score is just absolutely flawless.
Right, you're on top of the world.
Exactly. Everyone respects you. But then imagine dying, waking up, and realizing that the exact strategy you use to win at life, that very thing, is what makes you an absolute failure in the eyes of the universe.
Yeah, I mean, it is a truly terrifying thought experiment.
Oh, completely.
And it really just cuts straight to the core of how we as human beings measure worth.
And welcome to today's deep dive, because that is the central theme of the source material we are unpacking today. We've got this really detailed transcript of a sermon delivered on June 7, 2026.
Yeah, and that date is actually pretty significant.
Right. It was the first Sunday after Trinity. And the entire message zeroes in on that famous biblical parable of the rich man and Lazarus from Luke chapter 16.
It does.
Now, as a quick reminder to you listening, our goal today isn't to endorse or, debate the specific religious doctrines or the social critiques in this text. We are just here strictly to act as your guides.
Exactly, just unpacking the frameworks.
Right, unpacking the fascinating psychological and theological frameworks the pastor uses so you can really understand the core message of the source material.
And that context regarding the church calendar that you mentioned, that is actually a great place to start.
Oh, the Trinity season thing.
Yeah. The first Sunday after Trinity marks the beginning of the Trinity season in the traditional liturgical calendar. And unlike the first half of the year, which, focuses on the big historical events of Jesus' life.
Right, like Christmas and Easter.
Exactly. Yeah. The Trinity season is heavily focused on the practical daily application of faith. It asks, what does this actually look like in your life on a Tuesday?
Okay.
So the sermon approaches this ancient text with a very practical, almost psychological lens.
Which I love, because the mission of this deep dive is to unpack the stark, absolute contrast the text draws between justification before God and justification before men.
It really is a huge contrast.
It takes our modern obsession with status, approval, wealth, and just completely flips it upside down. And to set the stage, the text notes that before Jesus even tells the parable, he takes aim at the Pharisees.
He really goes after them.
He does. He condemns them, saying, you are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. For what is exalted among men is an abomination in the sight of God. So what is the actual mechanism behind that phrase, justify yourselves before men?
Well, the argument here really hinges on the idea of social currency. In this specific instance, the text clarifies that Jesus isn't necessarily talking about the mechanics of eternal salvation or like trying to earn a ticket to heaven through good deeds.
Right.
The target is the idolization of societal status. The Pharisees had essentially turned the approval of their peers into their ultimate authority. Yeah, they worshiped their own pristine social standing. They basically needed the crowd to validate them as righteous, successful, worthy, all of that.
So they're essentially playing to that invisible scoreboard we all kind of have in our heads.
Exactly.
And that setup perfectly contextualizes the very visible earthly reality we see in the first half of the parable, because we're introduced to the rich man, who is, the ultimate embodiment of someone who has mastered that earthly scoreboard.
Oh, he's winning the game.
Totally. The text describes him wearing purple and fine linen and feasting sumptuously every single day.
And it is so crucial to understand just how potent that visual was in the ancient world.
The purple dye.
Yeah, purple dye wasn't just like a nice fashion choice. It was an aggressive display of power.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The dye was extracted from this predatory sea snail called the murex. And it took tens of thousands of these rotting snails to produce just a few ounces of dye.
Oh, gross.
Yeah, the process smelled horrific. And the dye was obscenely expensive. So wearing purple was basically the ancient equivalent of driving a gold-plated hypercar.
That's wild.
It was a neon sign that screamed, I have arrived and I belong to the elite.
Meanwhile, sitting right at the gate of this guy's mansion is Lazarus. And the text frames him as an abomination before men.
Right.
He's a beggar, he's covered in oozing sores, surrounded by street dogs. And here is where the source material introduces an insight that honestly totally shifts the geometry of the story for me.
How so?
Well, usually when people read this, they assume the rich man is just like a greedy miser who just wants to hoard his wealth.
Right, just a Scrooge character.
Exactly. But the sermon analyzes his motivation through the lens of status preservation.
Yes. The psychology behind the rich man's inaction is fascinating here, because in the ancient Near East, The social structure was deeply rooted in patron-client relationships and reciprocal hospitality.
Meaning you host me, I host you.
Exactly. You hosted people of your own rank, and they hosted you. That is how you build social capital. And furthermore, ancient purity laws dictated that associating with a bleeding, unclean beggar would render you ceremonially unclean.
I see.
So if this incredibly wealthy, well-respected man were to actually go out to his gate and actively care for Lazarus, he would literally be contaminating his own brand.
He would become a social pariah to his fellow elites.
100%.
I mean, if he touches Lazarus, he can't go to the temple, he can't host his fancy dinner parties, his peers would just drop him instantly.
Right, he'd be ruined.
It is so much like modern networking or like the curation of a social media feed. People will deliberately distance themselves from the messy, uncool, or unpopular realities of life.
Because they're terrified.
Yeah, they're terrified of ruining the pristine image they've spent so much time projecting to the world.
And the tragedy highlighted by the text is that his strategy works flawlessly on earth.
It does.
He disobeys the explicit command to love his neighbor, yet the world looks at him and judges him as completely successful and innocent. He wins the human approval game.
But that entire strategy has a fatal flaw the second the timeline extends past his death.
Yes, it does.
Because both men die, and suddenly the metric of human status, the purple linen, the networking, the public approval, it just evaporates.
Completely evaporates. And the text reveals that the spiritual reality is the exact polar opposite of the visible earthly reality.
Right.
When God, who judges the heart rather than the exterior, looks at the rich man, he is found completely guilty. His earthly status is exposed as false righteousness, leaving him with nothing but filthy rags, and he goes to hell.
Wow.
Meanwhile, Lazarus, the unclean beggar that society viewed as a disgusting failure, is carried by angels to Abraham's side in heaven.
Okay, wait, let me stop you there, because I am looking at this from a modern lens, and my brain instantly goes to karma. It feels like a very classic cosmic balancing of the scales. Like, the rich guy was comfortable on earth, so now he suffers. Lazarus had a terrible life, so he gets a reward just to make things fair. Does the text support that kind of eat the rich interpretation?
No, actually. The sermon explicitly warns against that exact trap.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If we look closely at the details the pastor highlights, the karma interpretation falls apart completely. Notice where Lazarus ends up. He is carried to the side of Abraham.
Okay.
If the rule was simply rich people go to hell and poor people go to heaven, Abraham would never be in heaven.
Wait, why?
Because Abraham was historically exceptionally wealthy. He had vast flocks, herds, silver, gold, and even his own private army.
Oh, that is a massive detail. So the amount of money in your bank account is not the actual disqualifier.
Not at all. The theological focal point is the source of a person's justification.
Right.
The rich man is condemned
Yeah.
because he relied on his earthly status, his self-made righteousness, which the text calls an abomination before God.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Lazarus, on the other hand, isn't justified by his poverty. He is justified in the exact same way Abraham was. The source material emphasizes that Lazarus believed the Lord, and it was credited to him as righteousness.
Wow. So that completely severs the link between visible earthly success and spiritual standing,
Completely.
which sets up what is arguably the most radical part of this entire deep dive. Because if earthly status is completely worthless for spiritual justification, how does anyone actually get justified?
Right, what's the mechanism?
Exactly. And the text introduces this huge allegorical pivot, revealing who the true rich man actually is.
Yeah, the framework shifts here from the literal story to a sweeping theological allegory.
Yeah.
Spiritually speaking, the pastor argues that all human beings are barred from God's presence by sin.
Okay.
So in the spiritual realm, no matter how much purple linen you wear on earth, you are an unclean, low-status beggar, exactly like Lazarus.
So wait, we are all the ones sitting outside the gate with the sores?
Exactly the imagery used. And because humanity is spiritually bankrupt, justification is only possible if a genuinely rich man, someone with ultimate spiritual status, has compassion on us.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The revelation delivered here is that Jesus Christ is the true rich man. Christ is presented as the exact, deliberate opposite of the rich man in the parable.
Okay, to make this concrete, instead of a literal billionaire just like trading bank accounts with a beggar, it feels more like a courtroom scenario to me.
How so?
Well, imagine you're Duffy, completely dead to rights, going away for life. The judge doesn't just step down and pay your fine. He legally swaps your rap sheet with his own pristine, perfect record.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah. He goes to prison, permanently ruins his own reputation, and suffers the punishment just so you can walk out of the courtroom completely free.
Yeah.
It is a total exchange of identity and status.
That captures the mechanics of grace presented in the text perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christ existed in heaven with the ultimate status, but instead of preserving it, he looked down at the mass of unworthy beggars outside his gate, and he chose to step outside and share his riches.
Wow.
The sermon leans heavily into the paradox of Christ's earthly ministry, because in a first-century honor-shame culture, associating with the unclean was absolute social suicide.
Oh, for sure.
The more Jesus pleased God by eating with tax collectors, touching lepers, and mingling with sinners, the more his social credit score plummeted. Men hated him for it.
Because he completely refused to play the status preservation game. He associated with the exact people that the Pharisees, the elites, were actively avoiding.
And that rejection culminates in the crucifixion. The earthly scoreboard judges Christ as guilty and worthless.
Right.
He is stripped of his clothing, which provides a really stark visual contrast to the rich man wrapped in expensive purple linen, and he dies a shameful death outside the city gates, which was the place reserved for the cursed. The source material summarizes this divine exchange with a heavy theological phrase. It says, Christ willingly suffered this to exalt you with his shame and make you rich by his poverty.
Exalts you with his shame. That phrasing is just incredible because it completely inverts the logic of how the world operates.
It really does.
So if we bring this back down to the ground level, to that Tuesday afternoon reality we talked about earlier, what does this actually mean for the person sitting in the pew listening to this?
Right. How do you live it out?
Exactly. If Christ is the ultimate example of sacrificing status, how does the text apply this to daily life?
Well, the application is surprisingly mundane, yet incredibly demanding.
Yeah.
The pastor issues a direct charge. He says, go out into the world as rich men to follow the example of the rich man who made you rich.
Okay, but what does that look like?
He explains that this means fulfilling your God-given vocations. And the word vocation comes from vocare, meaning to call. It refers to the ordinary roles you already have. Being a faithful husband, a patient wife, a loving parent, an honest worker. It means washing the dishes, changing the diapers, and doing your job according to God's teaching.
Okay, but let's be honest. The world doesn't throw a parade for someone changing diapers or just quietly doing their job with integrity.
No, definitely not.
In fact, the text highlights a very harsh reality here. It promises that doing this will earn you zero worldly praise.
Zero.
If you actually live according to these teachings, society might look down on you. The text specifically mentions that the world might call you mean or stupid or intolerant.
Yeah, it doesn't pull any punches.
That is an incredibly bleak sales pitch. I mean, it flies in the face of every self-improvement book that promises success and influence. How is a life of suffering, shame, and being called intolerant by society supposed to be appealing?
Well, the core message is that a faithful life is fundamentally not supposed to be appealing in a worldly sense.
Yeah.
The text frames the Christian life as a calling to suffer shame for your neighbor. You aren't doing these things to build a brand or to go viral. You are doing them to serve the people right in front of you, even if it costs you your reputation.
Right.
The appeal, the true freedom, is that you get to step off the exhausting, performative treadmill of needing society's approval.
Because your ultimate status is already locked in.
Exactly.
You don't need to frantically monitor the scoreboard to see if you're worthy today, because the true rich man has already permanently secured your worth.
Precisely the point. You can face a world where you might experience failure, misunderstanding, and a total lack of societal reward without crumbling under the pressure.
That is actually really liberating.
It is. And this tough reality of earthly suffering leads into the most raw, visceral part of the entire sermon.
Yeah, the ending is intense.
It addresses the one universal human experience where our status inevitably hits absolute zero, regardless of how hard we try to preserve it.
Mhm.
And that's aging and physical decline.
This part of the transcript is just jarring in its honesty, because modern culture is absolutely terrified of aging.
Oh, terrifying.
We spend billions of dollars on creams, surgeries, and supplements to maintain the illusion of youth and independence. We are terrified of becoming useless or becoming a burden on the people around us.
And the source material confronts that terror head on. The pastor speaks directly to the older members of the congregation, acknowledging that as they age, their bodies and minds will inevitably deteriorate.
Right.
He paints a picture where they might eventually look and feel as undesirable, dirty, and burdensome as Lazarus did sitting at the gate.
Man, that's heavy.
He brings up the reality of losing memories, failing to recognize their own caretakers, or dying in a nursing home surrounded by strangers.
It is the total collapse of human autonomy and status. You're no longer producing, you're no longer achieving, you're just existing and needing care.
But right at the moment of ultimate loss, the text delivers its ultimate theological comfort. The pastor tells them, even then, when your standing before men is at its lowest, when no one cares, you will still be highly esteemed in the sight of God because of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Their value is not tied to their cognitive function, their physical beauty, or their societal utility. They have been judged perfectly innocent and perfectly worthy on account of Christ's exchanged record.
That is a profound psychological anchor, and it's fascinating how the service immediately physicalizes this concept.
Oh, the liturgy.
Yes. The transcript notes that after the sermon concludes, the congregation is invited to the altar as beggars. They transition straight into the liturgy, standing up to sing a specific offertory, "Create in me a clean heart."
Yeah, that's a very specific choice.
Right. Why that specific song, and how does the act of singing it reinforce everything we just talked about?
Well, the mechanics of the liturgy here act as a great equalizer. Create in me a clean heart is from Psalm 51, which was written by King David after a massive, catastrophic moral failure.
Oh, I see.
It's the plea of a king admitting that despite his crown, he is spiritually bankrupt and needs God to do the work of creating something clean within him.
That perfectly ties it together.
Exactly. By standing shoulder to shoulder, the wealthy business owner next to the struggling student, the healthy teenager next to the declining senior, and singing the same words, they're collectively abandoning their earthly status.
Wow.
The physical act of the liturgy forces everyone to acknowledge their shared reality as beggars before God, ready to receive the true rich man's wealth.
It takes this heavy, abstract theological concept and puts it right into their muscles and vocal cords.
It really does.
So, tracing the journey of this deep dive, we started by analyzing the toxic pursuit of human approval and the calculated status trap that the rich man fell into.
Right.
We moved past the timeline of death to see the fatal flaw in that strategy, where earthly metrics dissolve. We explored the radical allegory of Christ stepping out of his heavenly gate, ruining his own reputation to swap rap sheets with us. And finally, we landed on this incredibly grounding, status-free perspective on human decline and the equalizer of the liturgy.
And, regardless of your personal religious background, this text challenges the very metrics by which you assign human worth.
Absolutely.
It forces you to scrutinize that invisible scoreboard. Are you valuing the people in your life based on their purple and fine linen, their utility, their wealth, their aesthetic appeal? Or are you capable of recognizing a deeper inherent value that isn't tied to performance?
It is a question that demands an honest answer. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. The source text focuses heavily on the psychology of why the rich man ignored Lazarus.
Right, the preservation of status.
Exactly. It wasn't necessarily out of active malice or hatred. He simply ignored him to preserve his own social standing and keep his brand clean. So, take a hard look at your own life right now, your own daily routines and social circles.
It's a tough mirror to look into.
It really is. Who or what might you be ignoring or avoiding? Not because you hate them, but simply because associating with them doesn't align with the pristine, successful image you are trying so desperately to project to the world. Are you so fixated on your score that you're completely missing the person sitting right at your gate?